So this is going to be a quick take, but this is simple. Garrett here says, I think we should get rid of the physical media games for all platforms altogether. It's a waste of time and resources. I would beg to differ there, Mr. Garrett, and simply for the reason game preservation, gaming history. So when you start doing things like a great historical example, the burning of or the Great Library of Alexandria. That was a repository of the era's most. It was the most developed and most curated or historical archive of its time, and it was the only one. There were no copies of or the books, as far as I'm aware, and much of the artifacts and records were nigh unrecoverable, which means much of the era's history and the perceptions of the time and the documentation that they had, such as it was, is lost literally to time, and we can no longer recover it. What do you think is going to happen when you start making digital only games and you start having developers and localizers go back to re releases of these games that are in digital format and start doing things like they did to Resident Evil 4 and Skullgirls, where they start or changing certain things to meet modern sensibilities instead of just polishing or dusting off and updating the current versions of the games? And what happens when platforms like Steam start delisting or games off of their platform? Some of these are cannot be obtained in other places. Some of them can. Others you cannot purchase at all anymore except through a secondhand market of physical media. And even some of those you can get a physical copy of, but because of online always or online only requirements and patches that render the game useless for those that are still running services but are no longer obtainable, you cannot get a lot of the things to make these games playable. And if you start patching them and all that, you're running into other issues. But it's the only way to get some of these to work. Now, granted, a lot of these are available on other platforms like GOG, which is a godsend for game preservation. But a great example are older WWE games. Can't get them anymore because they've been superseded by newer, more modern versions. And same goes with sports games. It's a great example. I'm pretty sure going back and getting the original Madden is nigh impossible at this point, much less finding a physical copy of it. So, but this is an entire list here of games that have been discontinued, and some are superseded, but you still get my point. If you wanted to go back and play an original version of, say, or Dead Island, well, you've only got Dead Island Definitive now. What if you wanted to go back and play the original without the expansion because it did something different with a weapon? Well, now you can't do it because there's no way to obtain it unless you had a physical copy of the disc. So, while while the preservation is definitely the easy argument here, but censorship is also another argument. As when great example Resident Evil 4 with the whole fan service thing. Why was that removed? What did removing that add to the game? Like, no, it actually took away part of the unique charm of the game. And even though you can argue, like, yeah, it's a smack in the face to, or to would be perverts, but that was part of the service of the game. It was actually proving that she was aware of the kind of thing and she was rebuking people for it. Why was that a problem? But more to the point, if we don't have physical media, we're subject to losing games. We need ways to preserve gaming history so we don't repeat events or like book burnings or like the historical events of the Great Library of Alexandria. These things do matter, and gaming history is part of our culture. If we don't preserve our culture and have a record of where we were, and when we look back at where we were through the lens of modern sensibilities, we start editing things to meet modern sensibilities instead of understanding why things were the way they were at the time. That's why we need to preserve our history, so we can safeguard our future in the process and be able to look back on things as they actually were and not through a lens of modern sensibilities for the time. I hope you found this interesting. If you want to see more content like this, please let me know in the comments below. This was kind of off the cuff, but I felt it important to talk about. And I will see you all in the comments. Bye bye.